a bit of a surprise, a different audience. Welcome, those of you that weren't here before. And I'm not going to do a review on all the 4 parts that preceded, but just a little summary. We've been discussing Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Madhurya Kadambini, and we finished chapter 4. And chapters 1, 2, and 3 covered through Anartha Nivritti. The 9 stages of bhakti. The book is describing, in a summary way, similar to what Chaitanya Charitamrita does in a summary way, the 9 stages of bhakti that are found in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or our Nectar of Devotion. The first chapter discusses how bhakti begins. I mean, several things, but in really short, bhakti comes from bhakti. Those who are carrying bhakti are given power of attorney to give bhakti to others. Krishna gives that. So Krishna authorizes his Madhyama bhaktas to give Krishna, to give himself, through the power of bhakti. And so with that, bhakti has begun. So then the first chapter describes Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, and Bhajana Kriya. We're not going to review all that. And then the third chapter describes Anartha Nivritti. We're not going to review that either. Through devotional practice, Bhajana Kriya, there's potency for eradication of unwanted things. And those unwanted things have 4 different categories based upon their origin, where those unwanted things or anarthas arise from. We discussed that. One category is anarthas that arise from past sinful activities. Another is anarthas that arise from past pious activities, or specifically the spirit of trying to enjoy the fruits of past pious activities, or the mode of goodness, things in general, or even up to liberation. The anartha in the heart that arises from hankering for, let me out of here, this place is crazy. And anarthas that arise from offenses. So most of the chapter is discussing nam aparad, and different ways of looking at that. Doesn't go through all the 10 offenses, but some. And anarthas that arise from a little success in bhakti, and then trying to be the enjoyer of what comes from a little success in bhakti. And then the last class, I'm going to ask for some review. Last class, chapter 4, was a discussion on nishtha. He gives the subtitle, Nectar Begins to Flow. So, who has a good enough memory to remember how the chapter begins? There's 2 verses from Canto 1, Chapter 2 that describe Anartha Nivritti and then Nishtha. That should be a hint.
Hare Krishna. The anarthas in the heart are almost completely destroyed, and the knowledge of Sri Krishna is established as an irrevocable fact.
Okay, that's the second one. You know the verse? Anyone know the verse? Shrinvata Sukata Krishna. Say it loud. Give him the microphone because his voice is too soft.
Shrinvatam svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyantastaha bhadrani vidhunoti sritsana.
Very good.
English.
The translation.
Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma super soul in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted.
You have a very good memory. So, this is describing abhadrani. Abhadra means inauspicious things. Bhadra, auspicious. Abhadra, inauspicious. So, abhadras and anarthas are very similar. Not exactly the same, but the connotation is similar. So this is describing the anarthana vritti, directly from the Bhagavatam. Of course, Rupa Goswami's teachings are Lord Chaitanya's teachings, and Lord Chaitanya's teachings are taught in Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is the anarthana vritti process based on hearing and chanting, especially one who has developed an urge. I think you all have an urge for hearing and chanting. So you're moving along in this anarthana vritti stage. And may that day come very soon when this next one comes. Well, so what's the verse in Sanskrit? Nashtaprayeshu.
Icham bhagavata sevaya bhagavatutama shloke bhaktir bhavatir naishtaki. By regular attendance in the classes on Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving devotional service to the transcendent Lord is established.
Well, it doesn't become, the verse doesn't say it becomes completely destroyed. Nearly destroyed.
Nearly
Nashta.
destroyed.
Prayeshu.
Yeah.
Prayeshu. They eventually become completely destroyed, but this is describing one of the stages where they're nearly completely destroyed. Nashta. Prayeshu. There's another Bhagavatam verse. Prayenak payushak shavya kalavasman yugejana manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya hyupadrata. So that prayena, or here, nashta prayeshu, it means nearly gone. In this age of Kali, the other verse is describing that in the age of Kali, all good qualities are nearly gone. So it's almost destroyed to nil, only indicating it's a stage, that the nishtha. So that's text 18. And who can remember? This is review. Who can remember there were two types of nishtha, or steadiness? Who can remember? Who has a good memory? Yeah.
Is it the first one, steady determination to get to steadiness, or something like that? One has steady determination to get to steadiness, or something like that, and then there's actual steadiness.
Okay, that's interesting. There's steadiness in terms of the practice, and there's steadiness in terms of the characteristics or qualities of steadiness. Remember that? So the description that we heard from Vishwanath was elements favorable to bhakti, or the activities of bhakti itself, which comes first. Remember that discussion? So some of these qualities, humility, mercy, friendliness, these are symptoms of one who has become steady and has attained the stage of nishtha. Others, there's performance of activities of bhakti that are steadily performed, and those characteristics may not all be there yet. Anyway, so the conclusion we heard was it takes wisdom to see if there's steadiness of characteristics, is it based upon steadiness of bhakti? Because one can get confused. Remember that discussion? Another nice question he raises. This is something that we can examine ourselves. It's more important that we examine ourselves than measuring one another. The eagerness or the steadiness of the endeavor, the intensity of endeavor to hear and chant. Vishwanath says if someone is steady day after day after day, and their effort is strong in hearing and chanting and other forms of bhakti, then the Nartanavriti stage will pass quickly, and one will very quickly come to the nishtha stage. And then the last point, review. One of the most outstanding, valuable pieces of the whole Madhurya Kadambini, as far as I'm concerned, my personal devotional service. If you want to go beyond offenses, there's different techniques, this and that and the other, and they're all effective, but they're effective to the degree that there's a strong effort to do so. The propellant behind the technique is the sincere desire. It's very similar to the eligibility of a candidate for devotional service. And the eligibility for a candidate for devotional service is you want devotional service. You sincerely want it. Welcome. The laxity or intensity of effort, as well as the difficulty or ease in hearing, chanting, doing other devotional service, are the criterion for entering into, as well as in evaluating steadiness in bhakti. Okay? So that's the nishtha stage. So let's do a little review. The first stage is preliminary faith, adau shraddha. And the translation is a very nice translation. When there is this preliminary faith, which is one wants, one believes, one has confidence in the fact that there is a higher reality. I wish to attain self-realization. Then Krishna sends his representative devotees. Sadhu Sangha is next. One is eager for that, and one receives that, and then in the association, the third, in the association of sadhus, you do what sadhus do. Bhajana Kriya. And then from that Bhajana Kriya comes the fourth one, which is anarthas are removed. And just like this one here. As anarthas are removed almost to nil, nashta, prayeshu, then that's the nishtha stage. So that's 5. You only have 4 more to go. So this evening we'll be discussing 2 more of those 4 more to go. Then we'll have 1 more evening, we're done. Back home, back to Godhead, right? Stay tuned for tomorrow night. I'm going. Okay. The 5th chapter, he has given the subtitle, Attainment of Taste. So following nishtha is ruci. So that's what we're discussing. You remember I did with my hands because I couldn't find that chart? So here's the chart. And I believe the source of this is VIHE or the MIHE, I'm not certain. And the purpose is, as you see across the upper right, from the Adau Shraddha sloka, that's the 9 stages of bhakti, that's what's on the right-hand column, from Shraddha at the bottom up to Prema at the top. Those are the 9 stages. And then to the right-hand, far right, is Madhyama, Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama, Adhikari stages. Now I'm going to show you a slide. The next slide is Bhanu Swami differs, because I had some discussion with him about this actually 4 years ago. And well, I'll just say it. He goes like this. The Kanishta stage is down here, Shraddha, and then he indicates that the Madhyama Adhikari starts here with this association of devotees in Bhajana Kriya up to Asakti. So that's how it differs. And the column to the left, those of you that know Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text number 5, the message from Taittiriya Upanishad, Brahma Pucham Pratishta, if you recall that little section, Anamoya, Pranamoya, Gyanamoya, Vijnanamoya, Anandamoya. This chart adds an extra one. This one over here. It's not in the Bhagavad Gita. I don't know why that they added an extra one, or why Prabhupada left out 1 of the 6 and left only 5. I don't know. But from the Taittiriya Upanishad, there are stages of evolution of consciousness. And this is their chart indicating there's material consciousness before one begins, with association with devotees and some faith that has been awakened through the association of devotees, at least theoretical, what Prabhupada calls theoretical understanding, Jnanamaya, and then devotional service. Anyway, this is their chart, just sharing it. Vijnanamaya, self-realization progresses. The terms that Prabhupada uses are different than their subtitles under each of these. Here's Bhanu Swami's chart, which I like it more. Sadhana, so the topics of nectar devotion are 3: sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, prema bhakti. So he indicates that sadhana, of course, it begins when you start sadhana, bhajana kriya, and it goes up to the asakti stage. This is very sensible. Bhava bhakti begins, and it includes the bhava stage out of the 9 stages, and prema bhakti is the prema stage. So then he goes through the madhyama, the kanishta, madhyama, uttama, and this is his explanation. The Srimad Bhagavatam gives a definition of kanishta, which, at least according to the Bhagavatam definition, there's 2 places where it's discussed. There's not yet association. A kanishta, like, a kanishta goes to the church, mosque, synagogue, or temple, and they worship the Lord in the church, mosque, synagogue, or temple. And at least his rendering is, when they start associating with devotees, then they start in the Madhyama stage. That's his indication. And then through the association of devotees, they do what devotees do in the association of devotees. And that carries them right up to the beginning stages of bhava. This is his analysis. And then, and then the uttama, topmost stage is the upper regions of bhava, bhakti, and prema bhakti. So I was just sharing that because it was asked during one of the classes. So sharing the chart. We can come back and visit this if you want. So now, the chapter of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur begins with this statement. Ruci means attainment of taste. He states like this: when the devotee, it's poetic, when the devotee takes into his heart the golden medallion of bhakti, shining brilliantly by the fire of steady practice, nishtha, and propelled by its own energy, the energy of nishtha, then ruci appears. Just mention from earlier, repeat something that was discussed earlier. The nature of the creeper of bhakti is different than a plant in this way. In each of the successive stages, it describes something that the prior stages are included in that successive stage. Whereas, let's say a plant. If you have a plant that's just a little shoot that comes out of the soil, probably some of you have grown tulsis before. So a little shoot comes out. And then, just as described, 2 leaves unfurl. So when you get the mature stage of a tulsi plant, that little shoot that comes out with the 2 leaves that unfurl, it's no longer there. Because it's gone to another stage, and then the next stage, the prior stage is gone, and the next stage, the prior stage is gone. That's something material. It's something, the bhakti creeper, it's not that the prior stage is gone. Ruci appears, taste appears of its own accord. It's just a maturing of what was previously present. Just another appreciation. One of the 26 qualities of a devotee is that a devotee is poetic. You familiar with that list? 26 qualities of a devotee. And one of the reasons why a devotee is poetic is to describe something that's beyond our experience. You have to use metaphors because it's beyond our experience. So something that is within our experience, or something like what's within our experience, is used to indicate something that's beyond our experience. So this golden medallion of bhakti, shining brightly by the fire of steady practice. It's metaphor. It's poetic. But how else are you going to describe something that's beyond your experience? You speak poetically about it. So devotees it's just a natural quality. Poetic. There are some symptoms of this stage, this ruci stage. He describes, Vishwanath, everything except hearing and chanting is a waste of time. Bhagavatam speaks like that. Or at least unless the attraction for hearing and chanting awakens, whatever one may do that's considered a high-grade activity is a waste of time. That's Bhagavatam's language, and similarly this Vishwanath's language. When hearing and chanting, one gets energy and enlivened, one doesn't become fatigued. That's the stage of Ruci. And there's great attachment for hearing and chanting. He gives the example in this chapter of jaundice has its natural cure of misri or sugar candy. And in the beginning, when you have jaundice, has anybody here had jaundice before? I had jaundice before. And it's true. Taste misri, it's so bitter. But rock candy is not bitter. It's practically, too sweet. But it tastes bitter. So similarly, in the beginning, the activities of hearing and chanting may seem to be unpleasant or not attractive, or we do because we're supposed to do, but there is not any real attraction. Anyway, when the jaundiced-like condition of our material existence is remedied by the hearing and chanting activity, then there's taste for it. It tastes very sweet. That's the metaphor. Even if one does not have the taste, one should continue to hear and chant. That's his advice. So whether you have a taste or you don't have a taste, continue regularly. And from the previous, with some enthusiasm and some eagerness, even if it's just based on the faith that doing so will purify me, it'll elevate me, it'll cleanse my heart. And then the heart becomes cleansed. He writes, the jiva's heart, infected with ignorance and other kleshas, becomes cured by the medicine of repeated chanting, hearing, and other devotional methods. This ruci, this taste, is actually natural. All the stages, love of God is natural. So taste is natural. So if we're not experiencing it, take the medicine. That's the message. And gradually that taste will be restored. He indicates, and there's two types of ruci. One is where there's dependence upon the excellence of the elements. Now, I haven't read Bhakti Vikash Maharaj's book, but I heard him describing, so maybe those of you that have read his book, Bhakti Siddhanta's Life, can help me with this if I'm not saying it properly. But there was one devotee that Bhakti Siddhanta especially liked to lead kirtan. And he didn't sing so nicely like Bengalis can really sing so nicely, very sweet voice. He sang differently. But Bhaktisiddhanta especially liked to hear him sing because he sang with such devotion, not because the elements were so nice. Is that in his book? The name? Yeah.
And then another story also. They didn't always have it for this occasion. He also often would have devotees who sing nicely to sing because it would attract people to kirtan. He said by people getting attraction to kirtan, they'll gain qualification for hearing.
Okay. Okay. So in those that are dependent upon the excellence of the elements, like how gorgeously the deity is dressed, or how opulent the feast is, or how wonderful the instrumentation and accompaniment of the kirtan and the singing voice of the singer. And when it's really, really nice, then in this stage of ruci, one can easily become attracted, and one of the types, if that's not there, there isn't the same attraction. And then in the second is something like this example of Bhaktisiddhanta. When there isn't nice elements, one is very attracted to the chanting of holy name based upon it's the holy name. I mean, an example that comes to mind is Srivas Pandit, when he heard the Devananda Pandit, who was a mundane scholar, reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, just hearing Srimad Bhagavatam verses being recited, he swooned and fell to the ground in ecstasy. Because it wasn't, the elements were special, it was the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so then the second is those that are not dependent. And the way that he describes it is those who hear or participate in devotional activity where the elements are not excellent, they're experiencing great attraction. And when the elements are excellent, it's like over the top. But it's not dependent, their taste is not dependent upon. So these different examples, kirtan, deity worship, prasadam. I won't go into it. Because it can sometimes go the other way. Someone passes the Mahaprasadam and they don't see something they like, so they don't take anything, although it's Mahaprasadam. Then there's other people that go, I'm transcendental, just give me whatever you like. Because it's Mahaprasadam. And I'm an advanced devotee, it doesn't matter whether it's... Anyway, this is the real deal. This is ruci. So in this first category, where it's dependent upon the excellence of the elements, he uses this word dosha bhasa. What does dosha mean? Fault. And abhasa means shadow, reflection. So it's a trace of impurity, dosha abhasa. It's still, so it's just a trace of something. If there's ruci, when there's excellence of real ruci, then that's very elevated. Then there's this is an indication, interesting note, this is pure devotional service, where no more impurity because of that appearance of this stage of taste, which just appears of its own accord when after one has attained the stage of nishtha. So we really have to work on the Anartha Nivritti program, because these others, it's like a long time, Anartha Nivritti. Then the other stages, they move quickly. But that one doesn't move so quickly because of our attachments to the impermanent. And another symptom, there's this nice long section where the person in the stage of ruci feels themselves humbled. And particularly he mentions, humbled by the fact that, for so long they were chasing after, just like Dhruva, when he sees the personality of Godhead and then he departs, and he's lamenting. I was hankering from this broken piece of glass, and now I've gotten this precious jewel. So he's got the precious jewel, and he's happy to have the precious jewel, the Lord's association. But at the same time, there's this, not mundane, but a transcendental lamentation. I've wasted so much time. And in his case, now the Lord is gone. Please come, take darshan. The Lord is gone, and I have to stay here and serve as the king for 60,000 years before I can go to him. I'm wanting this broken piece of glass instead of the most valuable jewel of the Lord's association. He wanted the Lord's association to get his, the broken piece of glass, to get a kingdom. And he was lamenting for the foolishness of that spirit. So similarly, Vishwanath has this little paragraph where the devotee is berating himself, lamenting, I am so unfortunate. I kept the precious jewel of bhakti received from my spiritual master tied in the hem of my cloth. I lick up the bitter tasting, deceitful, profane gossip as if nectar. Have you noticed? There's some, have you heard the latest, Prabhu? And everyone's huddled around to hear the latest. And, you get the idea. Oh, really? That's not what I heard. I heard it that way. Oh, really? And everyone's wide awake. Anyway, I became sleepy during Katha, but my ears perk up whenever there is vulgar, idle talk. I have stained the assembly of devotees. So, it's not, not wallowing in lamentation, but it's recognizing that the waste of time and the foolishness and inappropriate attraction for other things. Then he goes into this. Devotional service is like a dance, and the dance instructor is Ruci. So if you want to dance, get Ruci. And in this second stage, the comment is there, this where there's no dependent upon the excellence of elements. This is Seva Nishtha. He calls that pure, unalloyed service to Krishna. And then devotional service begins. We've seen that phrase in the scriptures before, and I don't know if you've wondered, I certainly wondered, what does that mean? What are we doing now? The pre-Ruci stage, we're just like, what? What is it? It's not an imitation, it's practice. We're practicing, that's what we're doing. And come to this stage, and it's not just practice, it's the real thing. That's so when we're not dependent upon the externals. Ahaituki. Okay, ready for the next chapter. What comes after Ruci? Asakti. And he gives this as subtitle, Enchantment of the Heart. These chapters are short. The Bhava and the Prema chapters are quite long. We'll try to cover them tomorrow. Enchantment of the heart. Asakti is attachment for Krishna, which develops when taste for bhajan becomes extremely deep. He writes that the desire creeper of bhakti bears, again, poetic expression, clusters of buds, because the buds are going to open into a flower, and then the flower is going to produce a fruit. So it's just like spring, reminds me. Spring is such a nice season. So just like this tree out front, or anywhere you go, there's like little buds all over the place. and it portends what's going to come. Then comes the flowers, and then the fruit. So Asakti is a very advanced stage. The heart becomes enchanted, like clusters of buds, heralding the swift appearance of the flowers of bhava and then the fruits of prema. Nice language. Krishna. Let's do that one again. Krishna is the exclusive object of one's devotional activities. Whoa! Krishna. One doesn't see, think, contemplate, chase after anything. It's attachment. The heart becomes enchanted. Everything, everything, everything centered around Krishna. Very wonderful advanced stage in devotion. He then presents what's the difference between the two. They seem to have some similarity, taste and attachment. This is one distinction he makes. Ruci, commonly, has bhajan as the main object, and Asakti has Krishna as the main object. There's a taste for the activity, the attachment for the object of the activity. Nice. There he is, Krishna. Prior to Asakti, one has to apply effort to counteract desire and fix the mind on Krishna. We know all about that one. But in the Nishtha stage, one cannot detect how and when the mind withdraws from spirit. But when you reach the Asakti stage, Asakti cannot detect how and when the mind withdraws from matter. It's a nice contrast, isn't it? And absorption happens without effort. Just attention goes automatically or completely naturally, without effort. Withdraw the mind, withdraw the mind, withdraw the mind, bring it back to the holy name. And when there's Asakti, mind just goes to when there's a topic about Krishna, just the mind goes. The example given by Kapila Dev to Devahuti is just like a river flows downstream. You don't have to say, okay, river, go ahead. It just goes. Just goes. There's kirtan, the mind goes. There's katha, the mind goes. This isn't from Madhurya Kadambini, but there's a nice verse, amongst many nice verses, from Narada Bhakti Sutra, where the description is given that in the stage of attachment has 11 different objects. The translation goes like this. Although devotional service is one, it becomes manifested in 11 forms of attachment. So in the Sanskrit, it's Asakti, Asakti. It says Asakti 11 times. Attachment to the Lord's glorious qualities, beauty, attachment to worshiping Him, attachment to remembering Him, attachment to serving Him, attachment to reciprocating with Him as a friend, attachment to caring for Him as a parent, attachment to dealing with Him as a lover, attachment to surrendering one's whole self to Him, attachment to being absorbed in thought of Him, and attachment to experiencing separation from Him. This last is the supreme attachment. And nice commentary. Now, it doesn't indicate that these are sequential, although some of them appear to be sequential, but these different forms of attachment, very elevated. And last slide for this evening. There's he does this in each of the sections, where the I and mind, where does that stand? The spiritualization of I and mind is complete. Then it goes, to absolute, but complete is just before absolute. Complete, complete spiritual conception. There's nothing outside of Krishna and Krishnas. And material aspect, a trace. And meditation, very deep, that's the mind. And that's it. So these are the teachings. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Yes.
Hare Krishna. When I saw spiritualization of I and mind, I thought of, is this saying basically, I am the servant of Krishna and Krishna is my Lord? Is that the spiritualization?
That's correct. That's correct. That's the spiritualization. It doesn't become shunya, it becomes spiritualized.
Right.
Yeah. And that's manifest or experienced in the asakti state. We can talk about it, but this is what your experience is. And there isn't anything. Yeah, and there isn't anything else. There isn't anything else.
Maharaj, I have two questions. One was about in Ruci, the two types of Ruci, the one that depends on the quality of the elements and one that doesn't.
Yes.
I'm not experiencing either one of those because I'm not at Ruci yet. So when I depend on the quality. So basically, am I just experiencing, I'm not really experiencing any kind of devotion then, really?
Yes, it's real devotion. Your experience is real devotion. It's very consistent. It's real devotion. It's not at this stage, but it's real devotion. We discussed this. Where was I when I discussed this? I think it was in Naperville. Forget the language that's used, but it's like, a glimmer. Forget the Sanskrit term. A glimmer. So, and that is so nice in contrast with when that's not there. I mean, the happiness that you feel this is my observation. You can be in kirtan, for all of the 24 hours when there's 24-hour kirtan and you're happy. And then there's another one and you're there. There's a happiness that you feel, and it's not a material happiness. But that happiness is a glimmer. It's not the asakti kind of happiness. So, but it's definitely devotion. And then we can say, and when there's nothing else, then that's pure devotion. And are there any other things that attract you from time to time besides kirtan? Yes, Maharaj. Yeah, so, okay. So it's real, it's bhakti. It's just not this stage. Okay? Something else?
Yeah. The Narada Bhakti Sutra verse that mentioned the 11 qualities of Asakti, 11 types of attachment. And then it's mentioning these basically attachment to different types of relationships with Krishna.
Yeah, that's very high, isn't it?
Yeah. So I was just wondering, is this where one is first experiencing any type of rasa, or is the first point at which?
I don't feel qualified to answer that question. my understanding is rasa comes in the bhava stage, which is, this is on the threshold of bhakti. These are buds, as opposed to the flowers that come from the buds. So it's an attachment for, but not, at least my understanding. But I'm not scholarly in this area, so it's, I can't say definitively. Just this, that's my understanding. Rasa comes in the bhava stage, and there may be some attachment for one of those. Anyway, yeah. You have something. Does that cover it? You have another one? No. Okay.
I had a question.
Can you speak into the mic?
A few, maybe last slide. There is...
This one?
No, back.
The previous one?
Yeah, that one.
That one?
No, the one where it says in Ruci, bhajan is main object and Asakti as Lord is main object. My question was, how is the differentiation there? Because in bhajan, isn't the main purpose of your bhajan towards the Lord?
Well, no, it's not so difficult. Let me try to explain something that's not so difficult. Supposing that wonderful day comes that Mukunda reaches the stage of Ruci. And he has such taste, transcendental taste for bhajan. A more matured stage is not just the taste for the bhajan, but the absorption and attachment to the object, Krishna. Yeah?
It's more matured.
Yeah.
Okay.
And more specific and more personal. And then comes rasa, a particular mellow in relationship with Krishna, which will be experienced during bhajan. Anyway, so not the bhajan stops, now I go to the taste, and now then I go to the... So it continues. Yes, right behind you.
Can we simply, with studying all this, recognize what's in our highest interests and simply go forward with the mood of, Guru, what do you want me to do?
Yeah, sure.
And just only apply that.
Well,
can I finish? I'm so sorry. Because I just...
Keep going. Keep going.
And from that, not budge from that, knowing that that's in our highest interest to get through all this very quickly. And can't we get through all this very quickly by just being determined in that way? I mean, gradually raise the stages, as opposed to entertaining anything but that. I'm just wondering, can we simply just apply that, or is there more to it than just that?
I'll refer to Prahlad Maharaj, who says exactly what you just said. You know the verse? It's after his prayers, then Lord Nrsingadev says, you have pleased me very much, please take a benediction. Then it's the next chapter. He says, please don't ask me to ask for anything. There's only one thing between us. You're the master, I'm the servant, and then he repeats, and there's nothing else. So the answer to your question is yes. Now, we're not going to say, well, let's see now, is Prahlad Maharaj a pure devotee, or he's not there yet? He's a pure devotee. It's a certain mood of devotion. And is there a place for that certain mood of devotion? Yes. Yes. Sufficient? Yes. And if someone else has another spirit, look at a vase. It has all kinds of different flowers with different colors and fragrances, and There's a place for that too, in the vase. It's like, you know, and Rupa Goswami gives us teachings that indicate both. Vishwanath does also. And then there's varieties within those both, isn't it? So, you know, let's be careful to not, you know, be holier than, you know, be better than the other one, and the other one's better than the other one. And there's so much diversity in Transcendent. It's fantastic. Now, saying all of that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's gift specifically is love in the mood of the residents of Braja. That's Lord Chaitanya's gift. And so with that comes, you know, how to receive that gift. And there's elements to receiving that gift. That's part of what Guru wants. Yes? You don't have to budge from it. It's part of what Guru wants. Receive it. It's not just a matter of liberal versus conservative or something versus something. It's not a versus. It's the gift of Lord Chaitanya. And we have different, you know, different stages of and kinds of faith within our hearts. And you know, that's completely natural because we're all individual. Read very carefully or examine very carefully that which Lord Chaitanya is giving, particularly through Rupa Goswami, in the teacher of the science of loving mellows. Here's a little appreciation, again from my study of Tattva Sandarbha, or the study of the Sandarbha is a little bit, especially Tattva Sandarbha, but Jiva Goswami, in his strategy for presenting the Sandarbhas, in the first three, the first three, Bhagavat Sandarbha, Paramatma Sandarbha, and Bhakti Sandarbha, he doesn't, not until he gets to Krishna Sandarbha and then Priti Sandarbha, does he get into the speciality of Krishna and Krishna Tattva and Rasa. Doesn't touch it. He does it later because his audience is an external audience. So he deals with who is God. What does the Bhagavatam teach? It teaches Bhagavan. So it's in terms that other sampradayas that don't accept Krishna as we accept Krishna, don't have the value of Vraja Bhakti as we do, they'll go, yeah, this is, this is good writing. Then it gets into this other, after they've gone through all those Sandarbhas, and they go, wow, Jiva Goswami's super scholar. Then they can get into the speciality of Krishna and the love of Krishna in Vrindavan. So, is the other have its place? Absolutely has its place. And Gaudiya, followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wish to receive that gift which Lord Chaitanya gave, which is what I mentioned already. So that comes in its due course, kind of like what is being said here in one of these verses, that it may appear in different degrees at different times, and that's perfectly okay. Perfectly okay. Dr. Luke, go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
First, I just really liked that answer, so thank you for that answer you gave just now. Then I was seeking, I maybe misheard a statement earlier or misunderstood a statement earlier. I was trying to reconcile with the discussion from Mukunda Prabhu's question.
Which one? Mukunda's question?
Yeah. The statement I remember hearing was, after the second type of ruchi, real bhakti begins.
After the second what?
The second type of ruchi, that's when real bhakti begins.
I was using that phrase. Go ahead. What it says is the seva-nishta, or pure unalloyed service to Krishna, becomes established. It's the statement at the bottom. And I connected that, Vishwanath doesn't, I connected that with, there are multiple statements that we find from time to time. And then devotional service begins. It's even in the second canto verses. So go ahead. You want clarification, or you want to differ with it, or what's your question?
It sounded like his question was, I don't yet have either of the two types of ruchi. Am I performing real bhakti? So your answer was very encouraging.
And it's factual.
Yes.
Are you engaged in devotion? According to Rupa Goswami, not according to your humility, according to Rupa Goswami, are you engaged in devotional service? Yes. It's at a certain stage. It's practice. That's the kind of bhakti. Sadhana bhakti. This is another stage.
Full.
Okay.
Thank you.
Come on, you're the guy that knows how to do all the technology stuff. You can't turn on the microphone.
Hare Krishna.
Ah.
So at the end of the last paragraph, last chapter we just read, it says, the devotee who attains Asakti is oblivious to honor and dishonor. And I was wondering if you can expand on that.
I'm looking for my book. Go ahead.
Honor and dishonor. If you can expand upon that.
Are you saying you can't understand it from your own autobiography, or are you saying you can't understand it even conceptually, how it's possible? That's an honest answer. Okay. Well, you know the verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, Matra sparshas tu kaunteya satoshna sukha dukkada. You know that one? Agama payo nityas tang satiksha subharata. Krishna teaches, early Bhagavad Gita, there's duality in this place. And duality gives us a sense of happiness and distress based on sense perception. You know, the weather's really nice. Not too hot, not too cold. Nice. And then it's going to get real hot. Then it's going to get, medium again, and it's going to get, Chicago again. Really cold. So it's cold in the winter, and it's hot in the summer. So it's not like when you get to the stage of being transcendental, it stops being hot and cold. But rather, you don't feel miserable unless it's the right temperature. You don't feel unhappiness. You feel happiness regardless of the duality. So here's another one. Honor and dishonor. We like to be honored. We don't like to be dishonored. But a person who is completely fixed in their relationship with Krishna, they're indifferent. It's part of the illusory energies display of duality. Sometimes this and sometimes that. Sometimes one is honored, one doesn't even deserve being honored. Sometimes one is dishonored, one doesn't deserve being dishonored. And vice versa. So it just comes and it goes. It's the nature of the place. It's a place of duality. So now, when one has come to this stage, one is indifferent. Similar to like chapter 6, Bhagavad Gita, there's so many of those examples. Indifferent to duality. Sees pebbles, stones, and gold the same. So that arises, that indifference to those dualities arises from a spiritual, the spiritualization of I and mine. I really have nothing to do with this duality thing. It's not me. I may move my way through it and negotiate my, the affairs of life that are required of me, but it's not me. My identity is the spirit soul and my relationship with Krishna, and that's everything for me. So the duality thing is, one becomes indifferent to it. You may act according to the circumstance that's appropriate, but it's not, you don't identify with it. It doesn't bring happiness or distress. Either way. You can't, it's not cosmetic. You can't just put it on and then take it off and put it on and take it off. It's something that's inside. A higher consciousness. Does that help? Okay. Yes. Do you have the microphone?
This might be a tricky question.
Uh-oh.
I'll try to word it as straightforward as possible.
Stump the Swami question. Here it comes.
No, it's not the intention. I just need some clarification.
You gave the disclaimer, so my guard is up.
So it seems like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is giving a broad overview of Ruci and Asakti.
Yes.
And I wanted to know, in the context of what we were talking about in earlier chapters, of the smooth side of the Bhakti Lata, the Raganuga side and the Vaidhi side.
Okay.
I was wondering if Ruci and Asakti differed in the Raganuga Sadhaka and the Vaidhi Sadhaka, because I was thinking Asakti is it's not like a general thing, it's like it would differ depending on the sampradaya someone was in.
Yes, it would. But as far as the earlier part of the question, is if I've understood your question correctly, you're asking, is a sadhaka's asakti and a raganuga's asakti different? That's your question? Is a sadhaka's ruchi and a raganuga bhakta's ruchi different? That's your question?
Yeah.
I don't know. I would guess so. But, citing something authoritative from our acharyas, I don't have anything at my fingertips to cite. Dr. Luke? Slide before it what? You want to see the Narada Bhakti Sutra one? Okay, that's after this. Okay, now you. Raganuga. Yes. At the same time, some of them could belong to, all of them could belong to Raganuga. A Raganuga Bhakta may also do deity worship and etc. Some are exclusive. I'm sure there's other features that I'm not familiar with. You stumped me. Good going. Anything over here? On the ladies' side. Okay. Are we done? We're done. One more question.
Guru Prasad Swami Maharaj, in a lecture in Houston, said that every initiated devotee is expected to be at least a Madhyama Adhikari. That's a big part of my teachings ever since I've heard that. but according to your chart, and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I've
It's not my
misunderstood.
chart. I don't take...
Oh, not your chart. The chart that you have on the board there.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry about that. That really, maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but wouldn't that mean that Nishta would be the beginning of Madhyam Adhikari according to Guru Prasad Swami Maharaj, or am I misunderstanding something? Or within those lower stages, you do have people that...
This is the chart that I'm not so fond of, but I showed it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
This is the chart that I'm fond of. And Madhyama begins with Sadhu Sangha, according to Bhanu Swami. But we'll go back to this other one because you're taking some interest in it. One is doing bhajana kriya. Prabhupada, according to what Guru Prasad Swami spoke, Prabhupada consistently assigned the stage of Diksha falls within bhajana kriya. So according to what Guru Prasad Swami says, this chart is wrong. Is that okay? They should just at least make the line go down one more. Maybe I'll just redo the chart. Put a stick of dynamite under it and blow it up. Is that it? Anything else? We're done. Srila Prabhupada, he died.